Sign it.
Now.
It's a formality.
A formality for you. A foreclosure for me.
Don't be selfish, Alex. Family comes first.
Stop making this about you.
No.
Move non-essential holdings. New bank. No links.
Understood. Executing.
Do we have anything in writing? We do now.
No collateral. Just a simple $300,000 personal loan to your brother.
This protects everyone, dear.
Come on, Alex, be reasonable. Reasonable would be not asking. Again.
I sold the condo this morning.
You? What?
And this is my current net worth. You misjudged your safety net. Independence isn't a penthouse. It's the power to say no.
My name is Alex. I'm 29. And in my family, I've always been the responsible one, the reliable one. After years of grinding, paying my own way through a top university, and finally buying my first condo in the city. This was supposed to be my moment of victory. But instead of getting a congratulations, I walked straight into an ambush. My entire family sat me down for an emergency meeting where my father looked me dead in the eye and said, "We need you to co-sign and use your condo as collateral for Leo's $300,000 business loan. It's just a formality." A formality. In that instant, the cold truth hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't their daughter. I was their emergency fund. What they didn't know was that their little emergency fund was secretly worth over $2.3 million. And they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. While my family was busy celebrating Leo's latest achievement, which usually involved him not getting fired from his latest unpaid internship, I was quietly building an empire. It didn't happen in a flashy boardroom. It happened in the quiet hum of my cubicle, long after everyone else had gone home. It happened during lonely dinners of takeout eaten over spreadsheets, and weekends sacrificed not to parties, but to market analysis reports. My friends would text me, asking me to come out. "Come on, Alex, live a little," they'd say. I'd always text back a simple, "Sorry, swamped with work." They probably thought I was lonely. Maybe I was. But in my mind, it wasn't loneliness. It was an investment. Every hour I poured into my work at a top-tier financial firm in Chicago wasn't just an hour of my life. It was a brick. A brick in a fortress I was building around myself, a fortress they couldn't see. At work, I wasn't Alex, the responsible daughter. I was Alex, the shark. When there was a multi-million-dollar account on the brink of collapse, they didn't call a committee. They called me. I'd walk into a conference room full of anxious executives, my heels clicking on the polished floor, and I'd dissect the problem with surgical precision. I saw patterns in the numbers that no one else did. I found solutions buried in the chaos. My boss, a tough-as-nails guy named Mr. Harrison who rarely cracked a smile, would just nod slowly, a look of respect in his eyes. That nod, that single nod was more validation than I'd gotten from my own father in my entire life. The promotions came steadily. Analyst, senior analyst, project lead. With each new title came more responsibility, longer hours, and a bigger paycheck that I quietly funneled into investments. While Leo was blowing through his allowance on designer clothes and expensive nights out, I was studying stock options and real estate trends. My life became a cycle of work, sleep, and strategic financial planning. I knew what my family saw. They saw their quiet, unassuming daughter, the one who was good with numbers, the one who always showed up to family dinners in sensible clothes and drove a beat-up 10-year-old Honda Accord. My mom would often say, with that pitying tone of hers, "Oh, Alex, honey, you should really think about getting a new car. That thing looks like it's on its last legs." I would just smile and say, "It gets me from A to B, Mom. That's all I need." What she didn't see was the A to B I was really focused on. From A, a life of being an afterthought, to B, a future of complete and total independence. After leading a massive corporate restructuring project that saved the firm an estimated $50 million, Mr. Harrison called me into his corner office, the one with the panoramic view of the city. He didn't waste time with small talk. Alex, he said, leaning back in his leather chair, the board has approved your promotion to Director of Strategic Accounts. The position comes with a significant salary increase and a substantial stock options package. You've earned this. Hell, you're the best damn asset this company has. I remember walking out of his office, the offer letter feeling heavy in my hands. I didn't feel giddy. I felt calm. This wasn't a lottery ticket. This was the result of 1,000 sacrificed nights, a million tiny decisions to choose discipline over distraction. A few weeks later, I sat across from my financial advisor, a sharp woman named Sarah, whom I trusted implicitly. We'd been working together for years, carefully building my portfolio. She turned her laptop screen towards me. My eyes scanned the columns of numbers, the various accounts, the stocks, the bonds, the real estate investment trust I had bought into. And at the bottom of the screen, in bold green numbers, was the total. $2,347,000. My net worth. It didn't feel real. $2.3 million. I thought about Leo asking my parents for a few $100 to fix a dent in the new BMW they'd bought him. I thought about my dad boasting to his friends about Leo's potential while dismissing my career as just some office job. They had no idea. They still saw the quiet girl struggling to make ends meet. The one they could always count on to be the safety net because, in their minds, I had nothing to lose. They had no idea that I wasn't a safety net. I was a fortress. And the storm they were about to create was going to break against my walls. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. The quiet before the storm. That's the only way to describe the weeks leading up to the day my world shattered. It started subtly, like a change in the wind. My mother, who usually only called to remind me about someone's birthday or to passively complain about my father, suddenly developed an intense interest in my financial health. One Tuesday afternoon, she called me at work. "Alex, honey," she began, her voice dripping with a sweetness that was immediately suspicious. "I was just thinking about you. How is work going? Are you saving up? I bet your credit score is just wonderful, isn't it? You've always been so good with money." I remember staring at the phone, a knot tightening in my stomach. We had never, not once, had a conversation about my credit score. It was bizarre. I gave her a vague, non-committal answer and hung up, feeling a strange sense of unease. A few days later, my father called. This was even stranger. My father only called me for two reasons. Either someone was in the hospital, or he needed me to fix his computer over the phone. But this time, his tone was different. It was friendly. Artificially so. "Alex," he said, his voice booming with forced enthusiasm. "Just calling to check in on my girl. So, tell me, what are your plans? Any big investments on the horizon? Thinking about settling down? Buying a place of your own?" It felt like an interrogation disguised as a casual chat. Every question was a probe, a little needle trying to find a vein. I felt like an animal that senses a predator nearby but can't see it. The air felt heavy. Something was coming. I just didn't know what. The catalyst for the ambush was, ironically, the single biggest achievement of my life. After years of saving every penny, of living frugally while my friends bought new cars and went on lavish vacations, I finally did it. I bought my own place. Not just any place. A beautiful 2-bedroom condo in a new development downtown, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city that made my heart ache with pride. The day I closed the deal, I sat on the floor of the empty living room, the keys feeling heavy and real in my hand, and I cried. For the first time, I had something that was truly mine. Something I had built that no one could take away from me. Or so I thought. I made the mistake of sharing my happy news with my family. My mother's reaction was muted. "Oh, that's nice, dear," she said, before immediately changing the subject to a problem Leo was having with his landlord. My father just grunted in acknowledgement. Their lack of enthusiasm should have been my final warning. 2 weeks later, the call came. It was my mother, her voice tight with panic. "Alex, you need to come over. Now. It's an emergency." My mind raced. Was someone hurt? Was it Leo again? I dropped everything, jumped in my car, and sped to my parents' house, my heart pounding in my chest the entire way. I burst through the front door, expecting to see paramedics or police cars. Instead, I saw my father, my mother, and my brother, Leo, sitting calmly in the formal living room. And with them was a man in an expensive-looking suit, holding a leather briefcase. He had the cold, lifeless eyes of a shark. He was my father's corporate lawyer. There was no emergency. There was an ambush. "Alex, thank you for coming," my father said, his voice devoid of any warmth. He gestured to the empty armchair across from them. "Sit down." I sat, my body rigid, my eyes darting between their strangely calm faces. My father cleared his throat, a sound he always made before delivering a verdict. He placed a thick stack of documents, bound in a neat blue cover, on the coffee table between us. "As you know," he began, "your brother Leo is on the verge of a fantastic business opportunity, a real game changer. But like all new ventures, it requires capital." I looked at Leo. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was just staring intently at a spot on the Persian rug. My father continued, his voice taking on the tone of a CEO addressing a subordinate. "He needs a business loan, $300,000. The bank is ready to approve it, but they require a co-signer with significant assets to secure the loan." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. I felt the blood drain from my face. I knew where this was going. He slid the documents across the table. "We will be using your new condo as collateral for the loan. This is just a formality, of course. We've had Mr. Davies here draw up all the necessary paperwork. All you need to do is sign." I stared at the papers. Then I looked at their faces. My father eyed cold and demanding. My brother's a mask of cowardly silence. My mother's pleading and expectant. They had planned this. The weird phone calls, the probing questions. It was all reconnaissance. They were sizing up their target. My achievement wasn't a cause for celebration for them. It was an opportunity, an asset to be leveraged for the sake of their golden boy. I finally found my voice. It was barely a whisper. No. Just one word. But it was a word they had probably never heard from me before. Chaos erupted. My father's face turned a deep, blotchy red. My mother's eyes instantly filled with tears. "No?" my father repeated, his voice dangerously low. "What do you mean? No?" "I mean," I said, my voice getting stronger, "I am not signing away the home I worked my entire life for to fund another one of Leo's get-rich-quick schemes." Leo flinched as if I'd slapped him. My mother burst into full-blown sobs. "How can you be so selfish, Alex?" she cried, her voice choked with theatrical despair. "This is your brother's future, your family. How can you be so cold?" Cold? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her about all the nights I'd worked while she was bailing Leo out of trouble, about all the sacrifices I'd made that they never even noticed. But it was my father's reaction that broke something inside me forever. He stood up, towering over me, his shadow falling across the room. He slammed his fist on the coffee table, making the documents jump. "You will sign this," he roared, his voice shaking with rage. "After everything we've done for you, after all the opportunities we've given you, this is the least you can do. It is your duty to this family." Duty. That single word echoed in the sudden silence of the room. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. My life, my work, my success. In their eyes, it didn't belong to me. It belonged to the family, to be used and disposed of as they saw fit, for the benefit of the one who truly mattered. for Leo. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't their daughter. I was just a resource, a tool, an emergency fund in a sensible blazer. And that was the moment the old Alex died. The one who craved their approval, the one who kept trying, hoping one day they would see her. She was gone. And in her place, something cold and hard and unbreakable began to form. At this point in the story, I honestly don't even have a word for what I'm feeling. If you're feeling that same sense of outrage that I am right now, do me a favor. Comment just one word below that describes what this family just did. But instead of breaking down, that rage became a cold, focused energy, the game they had started. I was about to finish it. I didn't storm out. I didn't scream or cry or throw things. I just stood up. The sound of my chair scraping against the hardwood floor seemed deafening in the sudden, thick silence. I looked at each of them, one by one. My father, his face still flushed with anger. My mother, dabbing at her crocodile tears with a tissue. And Leo, my brother, who suddenly couldn't look me in the eye, who seemed to shrink into the plush cushions of the sofa. I saw them, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for a flicker of love or approval. I was looking at strangers. The pain was still there, a dull, heavy ache in my chest, but something else was rising to meet it. It was a strange, cold calm, a clarity so sharp it felt like a shard of ice in my gut. I turned, and without another word, I walked out the front door, closing it softly behind me. The drive back to my condo was a blur. The city lights smeared past my windows, but I didn't see them. I didn't cry. The tears were gone, burned away by the white-hot rage and the even colder realization that followed. It was over. That was the thought that kept repeating in my head, a quiet, steady drumbeat. Over. The years of trying to be good enough, smart enough, successful enough. The desperate hope that one day they would look at me with the same blind adoration they gave Leo. It was all a fantasy. A lie I had been telling myself for 29 years. They would never change. The rules of their game were fixed, and I was always meant to be the losing piece, the one sacrificed to protect the king. Well, I was done playing. The pain hadn't vanished. It had simply transformed. It had crystallized into something hard and useful. It had become fuel. I walked into my condo and locked the deadbolt. The click of the lock echoed in the silent apartment. It was the sound of a drawbridge being raised, a portcullis slamming shut. This was my sanctuary now, my fortress, and they were no longer welcome here. I didn't pace. I didn't pour a drink. I walked straight to my home office, sat down in my chair, and opened my laptop. The screen illuminated my face in the dark room. For years, I had used my skills to make other people millions, to solve complex financial problems for corporations. Now, I was going to solve my own. I opened a new, blank spreadsheet. The first thing I did was list my assets, the condo, my investment portfolio, my 401k, my savings, everything. Then I started a new tab. Liabilities. For a long time, the only thing I wrote on that page was a single word. Family. I stared at it, then deleted it. They weren't a liability anymore. They were a threat. And you don't manage a threat. You neutralize it. My first call was to Sarah, my financial advisor. Sarah, it's Alex, I said, my voice steady. I need you to do something for me. I want you to start the process of liquidating a portion of my non-essential assets and moving the cash into a new, private account at a different bank. An account that is completely unlinked to any of my previous financials. There was a pause. Is everything okay, Alex? She asked, her voice laced with concern. Everything is about to be, I replied. Just do it. Fast. My second call was to a name I had gotten from a senior partner at my firm a year ago, a name you only call when you need a bulldog, a shark who smells blood in the water. A family law and estate attorney named Marcus Thorne. His reputation was legendary. He didn't just win cases, he dismantled his opponents, piece by piece, with ruthless efficiency. I explained the situation to him in calm, measured tones, recounting the conversation, the demand, the threat. He listened without interruption. When I finished, the only thing he said was, "They put it in writing? Any of it?" I was about to say no when my phone buzzed. A new text message from my mother. My blood ran cold as I read it. "Alex, I know you're upset, but just so you know, your father has already had a preliminary conversation with the loan officer at the bank about the collateral process. They said it's very straightforward. Please don't complicate this with stubbornness. This is for your brother." I couldn't breathe. The audacity. The sheer, unmitigated gall. They weren't just planning. They had already started moving the chess pieces, acting as if my signature was a foregone conclusion, as if my consent didn't even matter. They were already trying to leverage my asset without my permission. The rage that had been simmering inside me exploded. It was a quiet, clean fury. I took a screenshot of the text message. "Actually, Marcus," I said into the phone, my voice like ice. She just did. "I'm sending it to you right now. The subject line will be Exhibit A." I could almost hear the smile in his voice. "I'll be in touch tomorrow morning with a plan of action, Ms. Vance. Get some rest." Rest was the last thing on my mind. Just as I hung up, my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed a picture of my brother, Leo, grinning from a ski trip they had taken last winter. A trip I had paid for with my Christmas bonus, disguised as a gift to the family. I stared at the screen, then answered, putting the call on speaker. "What the hell is your problem, Alex?" he whined, his voice a mixture of pleading and petulance. There was no, "Hello?" No, "Are you okay?" Just pure, unfiltered entitlement. "You're tearing this family apart over a stupid piece of paper. Mom is a wreck, and Dad looks like he's going to have a heart attack. Why do you always have to be so selfish and make everything about you?" Selfish. The word hit me, but it didn't hurt anymore. It was like watching a bad actor read a terrible line. It was pathetic. I let him finish his tirade. I let the silence stretch out, letting him squirm in it. Then I spoke, and the voice that came out was not my own. It was colder, harder. It was the voice of the director of strategic accounts, the voice of a woman who controlled a $2.3 million portfolio. "Because this time, Leo," I said slowly and clearly, "it is about me. Good luck with your business opportunity." I ended the call before he could respond. I blocked his number. Then I blocked my mother's. Then my father's. I turned back to my laptop. The spreadsheet was still open. I created a new tab and labeled it Action Plan. For the rest of the night, fueled by coffee and a cold, burning sense of purpose, I worked. I gathered digital copies of every financial document I owned. I wrote a detailed timeline of every instance of financial disparity, every loan I was never paid back, and every major expense of Leo's that they had covered. I documented everything. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It wasn't about getting an apology or trying to make them understand. That ship had sailed, sunk, and was now a wreck at the bottom of the ocean. This was about a strategic extraction. It was about surgically removing a cancer from my life. They had started a war based on the assumption that I was a weak, undefended territory, ripe for plunder. They were about to learn that they hadn't just kicked a hornet's nest, they had tried to rob a fortress, and the fortress was about to fire back. The email from my father arrived 3 days after the ambush. The subject line was family discussion. The body of the message was sickly sweet, almost unrecognizable. "Alex, Your mother and I have thought things through. Perhaps we were a little heated. We were stressed. We apologize. Can you please come over for dinner on Sunday? We can talk calmly, just the four of us. It was a trap. I knew it instantly. But a trap is only dangerous if you don't know how to disarm it. I replied with a simple 2-word email. Understood. See you Sunday. I spent the next 2 days finalizing everything with Marcus Thorne. My assets were secured. The necessary documents were printed and notarized. I dressed carefully for the dinner, choosing a sleek black suit that spoke of competence, not comfort. I was preparing for a corporate negotiation, not a family meal. When I arrived at the house, the atmosphere was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. The house smelled like my favorite childhood meal, my mother's famous pot roast. My mother, Carol, gave me a hug that was slightly too long and slightly too tight, murmuring, "Thank you for coming, honey. We just want to fix this." My father, Richard, was overly jovial, pouring wine and asking about my golf game, a hobby he had never expressed interest in before. Leo, the golden boy, was there too, sitting quietly on the couch, looking pale and nervous, playing the role of the chastised but apologetic younger brother. Dinner was bizarre. They talked about superficial things, the weather, the neighbor's new landscaping, the latest scandal involving one of my father's colleagues. They acted as if the argument a few days prior had been a minor spat over the thermostat. They didn't mention the condo, the loan, or the lawyer. They were building a comfortable cage, lulling me into a false sense of security before springing the lock. I played along, offering polite, brief answers, sipping my water, and watching. I was monitoring their body language like a hostile witness in a deposition. The moment of truth came after the dishes were cleared. My mother suggested coffee. My father waved his hand dismissively. "No, Carol, we need to handle this now." He looked at me, a calculated look of sincerity plastered across his face. "Alex," he began, "your mother and I have thought long and hard about the loan. We realize that asking you to use your new place as collateral was an overreach. We were emotional." My mother nodded sadly. "We just want what's best for our boys, dear." Leo nodded too, looking sheepish. I allowed a faint, hopeful expression to cross my face, the expression they expected from their compliant daughter. My father took out a new stack of papers, this time a single, thin folder. He placed it squarely on the coffee table. "So, we came up with a better solution," he said, tapping the folder confidently. "Mr. Davies, our lawyer, suggested a personal loan agreement. Leo will sign this. He will legally owe you the $300,000, and he will pay you back with interest." He paused, leaning forward. "This is important, Alex. Your condo is safe. This agreement just formalizes the debt. It makes things much simpler. We always find the best way for our children, don't we?" He pushed the folder towards me, along with an expensive Montblanc pen. Their eyes were full of triumphant expectation. They thought they had offered a magnificent compromise. They had successfully navigated the legal waters and found a loophole. Instead of leveraging my property, they were leveraging my future income, forcing me to tie up my liquid assets in a personal loan to Leo, a loan they knew damn well he would never repay. It was just a cleaner form of financial coercion. They expected me to fall over myself in gratitude for this act of grace. I did not move. I did not reach for the pen. I just looked at the agreement. I took a slow sip of my water, making the silence stretch. Their smiles faltered. My father's hand hovered nervously near the pen. Then, with deliberate slowness, I put my glass down. I looked at my father. I looked at my mother. I looked at Leo, who finally lifted his gaze, his eyes wide with nervous anticipation. I let them hang there for a beat too long. Then I reached into my bag. It wasn't the pen I took out. First, I placed my phone on the table, face up. A simple action, but the sight of an electronic device on the formal coffee table in their home was a breach of their sacred rules. It was a sign of disrespect. Their confusion deepened. Next, I took out a thin manila envelope. I placed it beside the phone. Unfortunately, I began, my voice flat, devoid of any emotion. This entire conversation is moot. For several reasons. I looked directly at my father. You wanted simplicity? Let's start with that. I reached into the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper, the confirmation of sale for my condo. I slid it across the table. I sold the condo this morning. The shock that registered on their faces was priceless, a symphony of disbelief. My father actually flinched, leaning back as if he'd been physically struck. You did what? Why? My mother gasped, clutching her pearls. Leo just stared at the paper, his jaw slack. They had banked on that property. They had built their entire scheme around it. Now, the collateral was gone. The location was getting cramped, I replied easily, as if discussing the weather. But that is actually the least important reason why this agreement won't work. I paused again, letting them process the sudden loss of their main weapon. I then opened the manila envelope fully. I pulled out a stapled set of documents, my financial portfolio review, certified by Marcus Thorne, my shark lawyer. I smoothed the pages out on the table. You mentioned Leo needing $300,000, I continued, my voice gaining a low, authoritative resonance, the voice I used when dismantling the budgets of Fortune 500 companies. I actually ran the numbers for you this weekend. That $300,000 loan you want to secure? I could write a personal check for that amount right now without disturbing my investment portfolio and not feel the impact. My mother squinted at the documents. Alex, what are these papers? Is this your savings? I gave her a polite, brittle smile. Look at the bold number at the bottom, Mom. She bent closer, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. My father, recovering his professional composure, reached for the papers, his hands trembling slightly. He scanned the columns, his lawyer's mind racing to reconcile the image of his office-drone daughter with the numbers on the page. $2.3 million, the total net worth. He flipped to the certifications page, verifying the legitimacy of the accountant's signature. This is impossible, my father whispered, the conviction in his voice completely gone. How? Your salary. We know your salary. My salary is only part of it, I corrected him calmly. My stock options, my strategic investments, the bonuses you never asked about because you were too busy focusing on Leo's student loan debt. I built this, Richard, brick by brick, in the silence you demanded of me. I used his first name. It was another pinprick of disrespect that further signaled the massive power shift. My mother looked utterly devastated, her tears this time genuine, but tears of shock and jealousy, not sadness. All this time, you hid this from us? Would you have treated me differently if you had known? I countered the question with a sharp, undeniable dagger. The silence was the only answer I needed. I finished the execution. I picked up the final sheet of paper, a crisp white letter with Marcus Thorne's letterhead at the top. I slid it to my father. And now for the actual business. What is this? My father asked, his voice shaking slightly. This, I stated, my voice like steel, is a temporary restraining order and a formal notice of intent to sue, based on financial harassment and attempted coercion, specifically referencing the texts you and Mother sent, which I have recorded. My mother let out a small, choked cry. Leo finally moved, jumping up from the couch. You can't be serious, Alex. A restraining order? Against your own family? You all proved very clearly what family means to you, I replied, standing up. It means using me as collateral. My lawyer will be in touch with yours on Monday morning. Any further attempt to contact me, harass me, or pressure me about my assets will be treated as a criminal violation. Our conversation is finished. I walked to the door, my heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. I didn't look back. I just walked out and closed the door softly, leaving the three of them sitting there, frozen in the wreckage of their shattered reality, surrounded by a $300,000 loan agreement, a proof of liquidation, and a portfolio showing they had just aggressively betrayed a millionaire. The moment I closed the front door, the silence I left behind was shattered. I didn't need to be in the room to know what was happening. I could picture it perfectly. My mother, her face a mask of horrified disbelief, would be the first to speak, her voice a reedy whisper. "Richard, what was that? What is she talking about? $2.3 million? A restraining order? This has to be a joke, right? A cruel, terrible joke?" My father, Richard, wouldn't answer immediately. He'd be staring at the legal document in his hand, the paper trembling slightly, his lawyer's mind frantically trying to process the magnitude of his miscalculation. He had brought a knife to a gunfight, only to discover his opponent had an entire armored division waiting for him. And Leo would just be sitting there, slack-jawed, the reality of his lost $300,000 lottery ticket crashing down on him. The Golden Boy's future had just evaporated. The initial shock would have quickly morphed into pure, unadulterated panic. This wasn't just about the failed loan anymore. This was about a lawsuit. It was about public humiliation. My father's reputation in his corporate circles was everything to him. The thought of a legal battle with his own daughter, a battle he was now painfully aware he was financially outmatched for, would be a nightmare made real. The restraining order wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a public declaration of war, a stain on the perfect family portrait they had so carefully cultivated. They hadn't just poked a sleeping bear. They had tried to rob it, and now it was awake, angry, and had a very, very good lawyer. The first barrage of panicked communication started before I even got to my car. My phone, which I had purposefully left on silent, lit up with a call from Mother. I ignored it. A few seconds later, another call. Father. Ignored. Then a text. Then another call. It was a frantic, desperate attempt to re-establish the control they had just so spectacularly lost. I started my car and pulled away from the curb, not even glancing back at the house. In my rearview mirror, I could see the porch light spilling onto the manicured lawn. It looked like a stage set for a play whose final tragic act had just concluded. By the time I got back to the temporary furnished apartment I had rented under a different name, a detail I had conveniently left out of our dinner conversation, my phone had logged 15 missed calls and 7 text messages. I had already blocked their numbers after the initial incident, but they had resorted to calling from my father's work phone and Leo's burner phone, which he probably used for God knows what. I didn't listen to the voicemails yet. I knew what they would be. I poured myself a glass of water, my hands perfectly steady, and sat down in the quiet, anonymous living room. I felt nothing. The anger, the pain. It had all been spent. What was left was a profound, quiet sense of finality. The next morning, as expected, the strategy shifted from panic to manipulation and blame. The emails started arriving in the special folder I had set up, the one labeled Evidence. My father's email was a masterpiece of narcissistic rage. Alexandra, it began. He only used my full name when he was trying to assert dominance. I have no words for the level of betrayal and disrespect you displayed last night. You have single-handedly destroyed this family. Everything we have ever done, every sacrifice we have ever made, was to build a future for you and your brother. And you have repaid us with this monstrous act of cruelty. You have become a cold, bitter person, and you have no one to blame but yourself for the path you have chosen. You have made your bed. Now lie in it. It was a classic move. Recast the victim as the villain. I wasn't reacting to their greed. I was the one who destroyed the family. I didn't respond. I simply forwarded the email to Marcus Thorne with a one-word note: filed. Next came my offense. She left a series of voicemails, each one more hysterical than the last. I finally listened to them, not out of curiosity, but as a final confirmation of the choice I had made. The first one was tearful, sobbing. "Alex, honey, please, please call me. I don't understand what's happening. How could you do this to your own mother? After all the years I spent raising you, all the sacrifices. My heart is broken, Alex. You're killing me." It was an attempt to weaponize guilt, a tactic she had perfected over decades. The second voicemail was angrier. "Do you have any idea what you've done? Your father is beside himself. He can't sleep. He can't eat. His reputation could be ruined. Is this what you wanted? To see us suffer? What kind of daughter are you?" And the third, and final one, was the desperate plea. "We can fix this, honey. I know we can. Just tell your lawyer to stop. We can talk. We can go back to how things were. Please, Alex. I love you." That last part, "I love you," it did not affect me. It was a word she used like a currency to buy compliance, but her currency was worthless to me now. Then came Leo's attempt. It wasn't a voicemail. It was a series of rapid-fire text messages from a number I didn't recognize. "Okay, you win. Happy now?" Followed a minute later by, "You're rich. We get it. Congrats." And then, the predictable bargain. "Look, just call off your lawyer. Seriously, I'll do anything. I'll get a job. A real one. I'll pay you back. Whatever you want. Just make this stop. You can't do this to Mom and Dad. Anything I want." It was almost laughable. The one thing I wanted was something he could never give me. A different childhood. A different family. I didn't reply to any of them. My silence was my most powerful weapon. It drove them insane. It was a denial of the power they thought they had over me. Every unanswered call, every unread email, was a confirmation that the rules had changed forever. They could no longer summon me, demand from me, or guilt me into submission. Their control panel was broken, the wires were cut, and they were just frantically pushing buttons that did nothing. They were trapped in the consequences of their own actions, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't there to fix it for them. 2 weeks after the dinner, the panic from my family subsided, replaced by a more insidious strategy. They couldn't reach me directly, so they tried to break through my defenses using my father's lawyer as a proxy. Marcus Thorne, my lawyer, called me on a Thursday morning. "Alex," he said, his voice calm and professional, "I've just received a letter from Richard's counsel. It's quite something." He explained that they were proposing a family mediation. They were dropping the lawsuit threat if I agreed to sit down with them and a therapist of their choosing to heal the family rift. It was a classic trap, wrapped in the language of therapy and reconciliation. They didn't want to heal. They wanted an audience. They wanted another chance to manipulate me, this time with a paid professional in the room to legitimize their narrative. I didn't even have to think about it. "Marcus," I said, my voice firm, "please respond to his counsel with the following message, verbatim. All future communications will be limited to the legal matters at hand. My client does not recognize a family rift. She recognizes a pattern of financial and emotional abuse, and she will not be participating in any further discussions outside the legal process. Any further attempts to initiate contact outside these parameters will be considered a violation of the restraining order." Marcus was silent for a moment, and then I heard a low chuckle. "Consider it sent, Alex. You're handling this perfectly." That phone call was my declaration of independence. It was the moment I stopped reacting to their moves and started dictating the terms of engagement. I went into my email and created a new filter. Any email from the email addresses of my mother, father, or brother would now automatically bypass my inbox and go directly into a folder labeled Legal Documentation. I wouldn't even see the subject lines. I wouldn't be tempted to read their poison. Then I went to the phone store and got a new number. I only gave it to a handful of people. It felt like changing the locks on my soul. With each small, decisive action, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders that I didn't even realize I had been carrying for my entire life. The constant, low-level anxiety of waiting for the next demand, the next guilt trip, the next disappointment. It was gone. In its place was a quiet, profound silence. For the first time, my life was truly my own. They had no more power over me. Their words were just noise now, directed into a digital void. I was no longer responsible for their choices, their panic, or their emotions. I was free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't backing down. I was choosing myself over their comfort. This was a massive moment for me. If you support this powerful decision, do me a favor. Drop a flexed bicep emoji in the comments below to send some strength her way for this journey. That strength, I quickly learned, wasn't just coming from inside me. It was all around me, in places I hadn't always appreciated. The night after I changed my number, there was a knock on my door. It was my best friend, Sarah. I hadn't even told her my new address yet. She had gotten it from my assistant. She was standing there holding 2 large pizza boxes and a bottle of expensive red wine. She didn't ask a million questions. She just looked at the unpacked boxes scattered around my temporary apartment, looked at my tired face, and said, "You are not alone in this." We sat on the floor, eating pizza straight from the box, and for the first time in weeks, I talked. I told her everything. She didn't offer advice or judgment. She just listened, and when I was done, she poured me another glass of wine and said, "Good for you. It's about damn time." That night, I realized that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about the people who show up with pizza when your world is falling apart. The support came from unexpected places, too. The next day at work, my boss, Mr. Harrison, called me into his office. "Alex," he said, getting straight to the point. "Your assistant mentioned you moved suddenly. I'm not asking for details. That's your business. I just want you to know that if you need anything, time off, a more flexible schedule, a referral to a good security consultant, you just say the word. You are a valued member of this team, and we've got your back." It was a simple, professional gesture, but it meant the world to me. At work, I was judged on my merit, my performance, and my results. I was an asset, not collateral. To be seen and valued for my competence, especially after my own family had tried to weaponize my success against me, was incredibly healing. Even Marcus Thorne, my bulldog lawyer, offered a form of support. He called to give me an update on the case, telling me that my father's lawyer had gone completely silent after receiving his last message. "They've realized they have no leverage," Marcus said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. "They expected you to be an emotional, irrational daughter. They were not prepared to deal with a strategic, well-funded CEO in her own life. Just focus on building your new life, Alex. Let me handle the garbage." These people, my friend, my boss, my lawyer, they were my new support system, my chosen family. They didn't demand anything from me. They didn't try to control me. They simply saw my value and reflected it to me. They were the ones building me up, while the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had spent a lifetime trying to tear me down. And as I started to unpack the boxes in my new temporary home, I knew I wasn't just building a new life. I was finally coming home to myself. A year can change everything. I'm standing on the balcony of my new home, a penthouse that overlooks the entire Chicago skyline, watching the city lights flicker to life as dusk settles in. A pair of strong arms wrap around my waist from behind, and I lean back into the comfortable warmth. "You're thinking again," Mark says, his voice a low rumble near my ear. I just smile. He's right. But for the first time in my life, my thoughts aren't filled with anxiety or dread. They're filled with peace. A year ago, I was living in a state of constant low-grade panic, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Now, the only thing I'm waiting for is the reservation confirmation for the new restaurant Mark and I are trying this weekend. At work, the promotion to director was just a stepping stone. 6 months ago, I was made vice president of our entire division. My life is quiet now, in the best possible way. It's a life I built, not for them, but for me. You might be wondering what happened to them. I don't seek out the information, but it finds me, usually through my best friend Sarah, who gives me the updates in small, manageable doses, like she's handling toxic waste. The legal battle never went to court. After Marcus Thorne presented them with the sheer volume of evidence I had collected and a projection of the legal costs they would incur, my father folded. Quietly. But the consequences of their actions rippled through their perfect world anyway. They had to sell the house. The big, sprawling colonial where I grew up felt like a ghost. They sold it to cover the legal fees from their own lawyer and to pay off a mountain of debt Leo had accumulated that they could no longer ignore. They live in a small condo now, in a suburb I've never been to. As for the golden boy himself, his fantastic business opportunity evaporated the moment his source of funding, me, disappeared. Without the family safety net, the real world, it turns out, was not kind to Leo. He was forced to get a real job for the first time in his life. Sarah told me she saw him working as a sales associate at a mid-range electronics store. He was helping a customer with a warranty plan. He had to learn about responsibility the hard way. And my father, his reputation took a hit. The world of corporate executives is small, and secrets don't stay secret for long. A messy, public legal threat from your own secretly wealthy daughter. That kind of story travels. It doesn't get you fired, but it changes how people look at you. It puts a crack in the perfect veneer of power and control. They didn't lose everything, but they lost their power. Specifically, their power over me. Then, about a month ago, something unexpected arrived. Not an email or a text, but a real physical letter forwarded from my office. The handwriting on the envelope was messy, unfamiliar. It was from Leo. I almost threw it away. But curiosity got the better of me. I sat on my balcony, the same one I'm standing on now, and I read it. It wasn't the letter I expected. There was no blame, no whining, no subtle manipulation. It was just an apology. He wrote about the humiliation of having to work for minimum wage, about the terror of having to pay his own rent for the first time. He wrote about how, in the quiet moments after a long shift, he finally started to understand the decades of inequality between us. He said he finally saw that he had been handed a life that I had been forced to build for myself. He didn't ask for anything. Not for money, not for forgiveness. He just said he was sorry. Did I write back? No. The wounds are too deep for a simple letter to heal. The trust is a pile of ash. But I didn't throw the letter away either. I put it in a drawer in my office. The door to that part of my life is closed. But for the first time, I'm considering that maybe, just maybe, it doesn't have to be locked and bolted forever. The choice, for once, is mine. Looking back, that whole crisis taught me a lesson I don't think I could have learned any other way. For years, I was searching for validation from people who were incapable of giving it. I thought their approval was the prize. But I was wrong. The real prize is self-respect. You have to be the one to validate yourself first. Financial independence isn't about owning a penthouse or having a fancy title. It's about being free. Free to say no. free to walk away, free to build your own life on your own terms. And family. Family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the one you build. It's the friend who shows up with pizza, the boss who has your back, the lawyer who fights for you. It's the people who lift you, instead of seeing you as a ladder. My story had a fortunate ending, but I know for many people, the battle is still ongoing. So I want to ask you, have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family members who took you for granted? And how did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below, because your story might be the one that gives someone else the courage they need. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice. Thank you for watching. And remember, the most powerful person you can be is yourself.